Okay, so now that you've gotten a little introduction to what an aha moment is, what that signpost is, now we're going to look at an example. And we're going to turn to excerpts from the novel Crash by Jerry Spinelli. Okay, so be on the lookout for this aha moment signpost where the author is telling us something, when a character finally realizes or understands something. And when we spot an aha moment, stop and ask yourself, how might this change things? So as we read the story, if you spot an aha moment, make sure that that's what you're asking yourself. How might this change things? So here's a brief little introduction to what the story is about if you're unfamiliar. It's a story about a middle school kid nicknamed Crash who bullies another kid. The kid he bullies is named Penn Webb, and Crash often calls him by his last name. The first scene is from the beginning of the story, from page 2 in fact, when the main character Crash is outside and he sees Penn walking down the sidewalk. So be on the lookout for these aha moments. Here we go. It was a sunny summer day. I was in the front yard digging a hole with my little red shovel. I heard something like whistling. I looked up. It was whistling. It was coming from a funny-looking, dorky little runt walking up the sidewalk. Only he wasn't just walking regular. He was walking like he owned the place, both hands in his pockets, sort of swaying la-di-da with each step, strolling. Strolling and gawking at the houses and whistling a happy little dorky tune like some Sneezy or Snoozy or whatever their names are. And he wore a button, like a big one. It covered about half his chest, which wasn't that hard since his chest was so scrawny. So here he comes, strolling, whistling, gawking, buttoning, dorking up the sidewalk onto my sidewalk, my property, and all of a sudden, I knew what I had to do. Like there was a big announcement coming down from the sky. Don't let him pass. Okay, so hopefully you realize, now I'm going to stop here because I've spotted the phrase, all of a sudden, I knew what I had to do. And so I realize that the author has given me a clue that the character has suddenly discovered something. And when an author shows us that a character has realized something, I want to stop and think about what that means. That's an aha moment. Spinelli, that's the author, then emphasizes the point even more strongly by adding, like there was a big announcement coming down from the sky. That's another clue in the text that the character has suddenly grown aware of something. So it's usually not quite that obvious where the author adds a second phrase, but that's just another clue that we have an aha moment here. Both phrases, they let me know that the character has grasped something important, and that insight is going to change things. And then the author tells us what Crash has realized. He can't let that kid pass. So when I see a character have an aha moment, I need to ask myself the question, how might this change things? So I think I know how, or at least I can make a good guess about what he's going to do next. I think that Crash is going to argue with this kid he referred to as a funny-looking, dorky little runt. He's going to make him stop, maybe, and he's probably going to do something to humiliate the kid, tease him, bully him, though I have to keep reading to make sure if I'm right. Now, when authors show us those aha moments, we need to pay attention. I mean, maybe Crash has realized he wants a friend, though, I mean, since he's calling the kid unpleasant names, I really think he's going to bully the kid some. So let's skip ahead in the book now to another aha moment, because it's not about the story Crash, it's about recognizing this aha moment signpost when we see it in reading, no matter what we're reading. So in this next section, we find that Crash and Penn, they're about to compete against each other in a school race. Webb's parents, okay, and his great-grandfather, Henry Wilhide Webb III, they've come to watch Penn run. And remember, Penn is the kid that Crash has been bullying. Crash is looking at all three of them in the stands, and he's thinking of his own grandfather, whose name is Scooter. Until now, Crash has continued to bully Penn. And as I read, see if you notice the aha moment that Crash has. The stands were empty. A school bus moved in the distance beyond the football goalpost. Under the crossbar and between the uprights, like a framed picture, stood three people. For once, Webb's parents didn't look so odd, not compared to the man standing between them. He was shorter than them and real skinny, like the prairie winds were eroding him away. But he was standing straight and by himself. No cane, no walker, just two legs. 93 years old. Maybe it was the Missouri River mud. The thought came to me. They would have liked each other, Scooter and Henry Wilhide Webb III, the two storytellers, both from the great flat open spaces, one a prairie of grass, one of water. Both came to watch when no one else was there. So, did you hear the aha? Did you hear that aha moment? Now, when I saw the phrase, the thought came over me, and I'm highlighting it right there in the text, I knew that Crash had figured something out. He had an aha moment. Authors use these aha moments to show us insight, to show us something that the character now understands. Now, once you spot the aha moment, that's only the first step. You need to think about the anchor question we want to ask ourselves. How might this change things? How might Crash's realization that the two grandfathers might have liked one another, how might that change Crash? So take a moment, even pause the video to jot down your answers to answer that question. How might Crash's realization that the two grandfathers might have liked each other, how might that change Crash? All right. Hopefully you've pointed out that since Crash is thinking about how the grandfathers liked each other, perhaps that might mean Crash will think that if Crash's grandfather and Penn's grandfather could be friends, then maybe that Crash can be friends with Penn too. So what you've seen, whether it actually happens in the story or not, is that when an author shows us an aha that a character has had, we need to wonder how that insight will change things and what it shows us about the character. Now, we'll learn more as we keep reading. So I'm going to continue reading now, and when you feel that you hear or see a place in the text where a character is having that aha moment, be sure to note it. Okay, now this excerpt comes from a space that's still before the race, and Crash is still thinking about Penn's great-grandfather. Why exactly was he here? Did he know about me? Did he know his great-grandson could not win the race off, and so would not run in the Penn relays? I wonder if Webb felt safe in his great-grandfather's bed. The cinder track crunched under my feet. There were 5 of us in the race. Me, Webb, 2 other 7th graders, and a 6th grader. The coach put us in lanes. Me and Webb were side by side. Again, he hadn't said a word to me all day. We milled around behind the starting blocks, nervous, shaking arms and legs, everything as quiet as if the coach had already said, "Ready." The other team members, jumpers, throwers, distance runners, they had all stopped their practicing to watch. A single hawk, its wingtips spread like black finders, knitted over the school, and suddenly I saw something. A gift. A gift for a great-grandfather from North Dakota. Maybe for all great-grandfathers. But the thing was, only one person could give the gift, and it wasn't the great-grandson, not on his fastest day alive. It was me. I hated it being me. I tried not to see, but everywhere I looked, there it was. The gift. Okay, this one might be a little tricky to spot, so let's look back at the paragraph that begins the other team members again. So it says, the other team members, jumpers, throwers, distance runners, had all stopped their practicing to watch. A single hawk, its wingtips spread like black finders, kited over the school, and suddenly I saw something, a gift. Okay, right there, did you notice the realization that Crash has had? It's in the phrase, suddenly I saw something. Now that might be a little hard because you might think he literally saw something, but if you think about it, you realize it means Crash saw something in his mind. He saw something he's realized. Now what question should we ask ourselves when we see an aha moment like this? Yep, it's how might this change things? So ask it right now. How might this realization that Crash just had, how might it change things? Well, Crash has just realized he could give Penn's great-grandfather a gift, and I'm sure that he is the only one who can because he's the fastest runner. And I'm sure that some of you think that Crash is going to let Penn Webb win the race. So let's see what happens next. So as I read this last piece of the chapter, stop to notice and note any parts that show you an aha moment, and we'll come back to them in a second. "Let's go, boys," said the coach. A voice closer to me said, "Good luck." It was Webb, sticking out his dorky hand, smiling that old dorky smile of his. No button. I shook his hand, and it occurred to me that because he was always eating my dust, the dumb fish cake had never won a real race and probably didn't know how. And now there wasn't time. "Don't forget to lean," I told him. His face went blank. The coach called, "Ready." I got down, feet in the blocks, right knee on the track, thumbs and forefingers on the chalk, eyes straight down, and right then, for the first time in my life, I didn't know if I wanted to win. Set, knee up, rear up, eyes up. The coach says the most important thing here is to focus your mind. You are a coiled steel spring ready to dart out at the sound of a gun. So what comes into my head? Ollie, the one-armed octopus. He didn't disappear till the gun went off. I was behind not only Webb, but everybody. No problem. Within 10 strides, I picked up 3 of them. That left Webb. He was farther ahead of me than usual, but that was because of my rotten start. At the halfway mark, where I usually passed him, he was still ahead, and I still didn't know if I wanted to win. I gassed it, and the gap closed. I could hear him puffing like a second set of footsteps. Cinderflecks from his feet pecked at my shins. I was still behind. The finish line was closing. I kicked in the afterburners. 10 meters from the white string, we were shoulder to shoulder, breath to breath, grandson to great-grandson, and it felt new. It felt good. Not being behind, not being ahead, but being even. And just like that, a half breath from the white string, I knew. There was no time to turn to him. I just barked it out. "Lean!" He leaned. He threw his chest out. He broke the string. He won. So, all right, that's the end of the section. I hope you were taking note of the places, the phrases, the words that showed the aha moments that Crash had. There were several. You might have noticed one when I read the phrase, "It occurred to me." It's an aha moment, and because it is, we should ask the anchor question, how might this change things? At that point, Crash had realized that Penn Webb can't win the race on his own, and he doesn't have time to teach Penn how. There was another moment, another aha moment that's very similar when Crash says, "For the first time in my life, I didn't know if I wanted to win." Okay, it was right here in the text. I didn't know if I wanted to win. So we ask ourselves, how might this change things? Well, it shows us that Crash has grown up enough to see that winning may not be the most important thing at this point. Now, hopefully, you spotted the most obvious aha moment of all, which is right at the end of the chapter. What is it? Well, hopefully, you got that when the author uses language like "I knew," he's giving us a clear indication that the character has figured something out. And it came right here at the very, very end. So he's approaching the white string and he says, "I knew." There was no time to turn to him. I just barked out, "Lean." At that moment, that was an aha moment. And so we ask ourselves, how might this change things? And sure enough, it changed things because Crash let Penn win the race. He told him how. Okay, so let's just review, everybody. Today, we learned a little more and we went through an example about spotting aha moments. So as you continue to read going forward or watch your TV shows, watch movies or whatever, when you feel you notice one of these signposts, and we've reviewed 2 so far, okay? We have the contrast and contradictions one, and now we have aha moments. So when you notice one, be sure to stop and ask this signpost anchor question, how might this change things? Now, please be prepared to build on this tomorrow as we're going to look at a different text and go ahead and look for the next signpost, which is tough questions. Hope things are clear. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to reach out if you have questions. And thanks. I'll see you virtually tomorrow.